Critique of video games has existed for as long as video games itself, from the days of Playmeter magazine in the 70s to the small individual content creators of today. And so, the art of video game review has also evolved over time. Critique of video games went from simple commentary to complex and structured criticism. While nothing is set in stone when it comes to this field, there are certain paths one can take when presenting an opinion. As such, it is not very hard to see, even if you don't know who HbomberGuy or what Fallout is, the troubles with this video from the title itself. But let's take a step back. Fallout is one of the most beloved and well-known RPG, and in recent times action RPG, and even more recent times MMO FPS Battle Royale series in gaming. However, where most video game series are usually made by the same developers, following a similar game development philosophy with some spin-offs for flavor, the Fallout series has a very different story. It was originally made by Black Isle Studios, but after the financial difficulties and later bankruptcy of Interplay, who owned the rights to the game, and Black Isle Studios itself, the third game in the series was cancelled. The game's rights were sold to Bethesda Studios, and this created a problem. Bethesda Studios, after their game Oblivion, had started leaning towards making RPGs that put a larger emphasis on combat, environmental storytelling, and more accessible game design, whereas Black Isle Studios cared about direct storytelling, world building, and overall making a more serious/difficult game, like Baldur's Gate for example. Naturally, when Bethesda Softworks released the action RPG FPS Fallout 3, a division between the new fans to the series and the old fans was formed. The video which I will now comment on came about because of this division. If you do not have the time to watch either this video or HbomberGuy's video, you should know at least this much. Now, let's get to the video itself. Fallout 3 is garbage, and here is why. You might ask why I'm reviewing a review from a few years ago. I want this video to not only address HbomberGuy's points about the game, since he makes many problematic ones, that others like to repeat, and as I will explain later, is hurtful for the video game industry itself, but I will also briefly talk about this presentation as well. It presents more than just simple commentary on Fallout 3. As I stated in the beginning of the video itself, the problems with Fallout 3 is garbage, and here is why starts with the title and thumbnail itself. I have to admit this presentation, as HbomberGuy will put it, is genius. Just look at it. Fallout 3 is garbage, and here is why, in bold capital letters. Whether HbomberGuy realizes it or not, this is one of the highest forms of clickbait one can present. You take something which is generally considered controversial by others, and you call it garbage, worthless, or meaningless material or ideas. Rubbish. Whereas most creators who respect themselves and their audiences would give their video a title that either represents what they specifically don't like about a thing or their general opinion on it in a realistic manner. HbomberGuy chooses to call Fallout 3 garbage, even though that does nothing to describe the inherent problems he finds with the game, and neither does it represent his true feelings, as he later says that there were good things he liked about the game. It is no wonder that this video, which lacks HbomberGuy's regular professionalism and mostly respectable demeanor we see in his later videos, is still the most viewed video on his channel. It's clickbait. I, and many others who clicked on this video, did not do so because it seemed interesting, but because it was provocative. This is no better, or in fact worse, than just putting tits or red circles on a thumbnail. Here are some alternative titles. Why Fallout 3 failed as a sequel, why Fallout 3 is boring, why and how I think Fallout 3 failed. Which brings us to the video itself. After a quick introduction, HbomberGuy talks about one specific review someone made, talks about the 3 things he liked about the game, and then proceeds to dive into random topics from web design to difficulty to player choice before shouting at his microphone incoherently.
Of people or not is a deep question! Oh my god! Game journalism is unethical! The whole thing is a fucking nightmare mess! So we have to stop them! We have to stop this! How can anyone think this about?
Coincidentally, this was the point where I closed the video when I first watched it, because I thought that the rest of the video would be similarly loud. It is no wonder some people gave it a dislike without watching it first. It is indeed wrong to criticize something before you fully understand it, but it's much worse to actively make your content unbearable to listen to. If you watch this video, you are presented with 90% stock Fallout 3 gameplay, a very loud and rude person complaining about things in an obnoxious manner and mostly overdone topics. So can you really blame some of the 68,000 people who maybe didn't have the time or willpower needed to suffer through the 90 minutes this video has to offer? So you might say, why would I watch a poorly edited video instead? Well, that's why, as you will see, cut up this video into manageable bits to watch and did not scream into my microphone. However, if you wish to counter the specific points I make, then you should watch the whole thing just like how I did now to criticize HbomberGuy's video. Speaking of YouTube, it is worth mentioning that HbomberGuy likely removed all comments criticizing his video. I could have sworn that there were many people making fair and logical points about the video years ago, but none of them are to be seen today. If you don't believe me, that's okay, but think about it. This video has 68,000 dislikes and not one single negative comment. I really doubt that all these 68,000 people were raving haters calling him slurs who deserve to get their comments removed, but that's just me. On final note, you really shouldn't send hate to HbomberGuy for this video because of how much he changed since then, and for that same reason I won't criticize him directly, since he may have changed his views and he may be unhappy himself with how this video turned out by now. Which brings us to the meat of this video itself. Each and every proper criticism HbomberGuy makes about the game. One.
The idea that the reviewers only care about the watch system, as that was what they mostly talked about.
Okay, let's take a look. I searched on Google for Fallout 3 reviews and made it so that only posts between 2008 and 2010 showed up. The first reviews I saw were from Metacritic, IGN and GameSpot. Of these, the Metacritic review mentioned VATS a total of 2 times, IGN 4 times, GameSpot 4 times, in a text that was around 6 to 10 paragraphs long. When it comes to the video reviews, what else would you expect them to show? The great graphics from a game made for an engine that was old even then. Also, the trailer for Fallout 3 shows VATS only at the end for like 2 and 3 times. VATS was a selling point for the game, but it was a minor one at best. 2.
Technical problems.
I guess so. Indeed, every Bethesda game comes packed with bugs, but problems are expected when PC games are ported to console. While it's not like the game is unplayable, there is the major bug in the game where some people crash in the intro, but that seems to be caused by the system issues of modern computers. But I guess even if one player can't fully enjoy the game, this is true. But considering the size and ambition of Fallout 3, it isn't exactly throw out of the oven bet. But there are still many issues that should have been taken into consideration before release.
No, seriously, the IGN review of Fallout 3 talks about how fucking deep and intricate the morality system is, and that doing bad things can have dangerous, long-lasting effects. He says this over footage of his character picking up a fork, and as all the objects on the table bizarrely float around for no reason, the entire city begins to shoot him to death for theft.
3.
Random thoughts on the morality system and folks and the trailer.
First of all, the review and footage that play are not made in the same moment. This video has over an hour of stock footage of gameplay with you talking. You should know about this. The people who make the video and do the interview are not the same. Showing what happens when you steal is the fastest way of showing the morality system. Should they have paused the video and explained an entire side quest in the game? 4.
Praise.
HbomberGuy actually says a few good things about the game here. While this may seem innocent and genuine at first, there is a cynical side of me that says that he's using a specific type of rhetoric where you praise something before trashing it so that you seem reasonable and kind even though you don't really care about it. And also, this is my own personal interpretation, but it's funny to me how he talks for 90 minutes about how he wants quality decision making and realistic NPCs in his Fallout game, and then says that the only thing he liked from Fallout 3 were a racist archetype and a slightly more racist archetype, but that's just me.
Hey, wait a minute. Megaton's a little different from up here. What is this? Morrowind?
5.
Megaton rendering.
Not sure if this is an actual criticism or a joke. If it's a joke, good one. If it's not, please go read on video game rendering.
The next hour or so is spent making the character, picking their stats and learning the dialogue and VATS systems, ironically being hand-holded and treated like a baby with no consequence for our
6.
The lack of consequences in the tutorial.
This is a tutorial. The whole point of it is to teach the game's mechanics in a safe environment. Also, your character is a teenager. Of course, punishment for your actions is going to be lenient. Unless, say, the person in charge of where you live changes the rules.
There he is. Hold it right there.
And it was here, in the first proper room of the game, that I knew Fallout 3 was going to be a problem. This is Officer Kendall. He and all the other cops in the vault beside one attack you on sight as soon as they see you. Remember how I just said you can finally act of your own volition? That was a lie. You can't initiate dialogue at all. The roaches that attack him rarely kill him for you, and once he kills them, he goes hostile on you. If you try to run away, he'll chase you. He'll chase you through the entire vault. He is dedicated to putting his finger...
8.
Officer Kendall.
This is actually one of my favorite parts in the entire tutorial for the depth you can find in it. First of all, the whole "he was in your birthday party, why is he attacking you" argument. Have you ever seen the news? Police officers can be messed up. We never knew who this Officer Kendall really was. And also other security guards in the vault can help you, further showing the division in the vault between the citizens and the overseer. So HbomberGuy asks, well, why does he instantly try to kill me instead of arresting me? Well, simple. He does try to arrest you. If he wanted to kill you, he would have taken one of the many guns in the vault armory and just shoot you. In the game too, the overseer tries to question you before trying to kill you. The fact that he attacks you with a baton shows that he was merely trying to knock you unconscious, or at least scare or injure you and then bring you to the overseer, using excessive force in the process and accidentally killing you, something police officers often do. This is really good storytelling. I could have talked here for an hour about the deeper meaning you can find here about the authority and people you consider enemies here, but this video can be only so long. 9.
Butch talking to you.
Isn't this what you wanted, seeing as you complain about everyone being enemies later on? To talk to people who are against you and come up with solutions based on that? Butch is a bully, yes, but he's still your neighbor. Would you kill the person living next to you as soon as the place you live in goes into some trouble? There is even a moral dilemma here. Do you help the bully who hurt you? Or do you ignore him? Or do you make use of the situation to hurt him or his mother even more? This isn't exactly Dostoevsky, but it sure is interesting.
Oh, knife! Having a conversation with the human beings in front of you with thoughts and dreams and...
The Stanley Parable is breaking ground by allowing the player to do literally anything. Let's look at an example. In this scenario, the player has just infused a bicycle with the soul of his great-great-great-uncle Hermophilides. From this point, he might use Hermophilides' ethereal presence to detect nearby mineral deposits, or perhaps he might train the bicycle in the art of undoing temporal paradoxes. It seems that the player has chosen to use the haunted bicycle to deceive townsfolk as a part of his snake oil salesman ruse. How bold.
10.
Be able to talk to people you can kill.
You can talk to the overseer, Amata, Butch, various security guards, the insane robot. The other security guards are ordered to kill or arrest you on sight and have no reason to speak to you. HbomberGuy speaks as if you can talk out of every single situation in Fallout 1 and 2 as well. It would make no sense anyway, I guess. And Frank didn't have enough charisma points to talk down the Nazis, am I right? Does he have a personal reason to hate the Fallout 3 developer team?
Fallout 3's engine is fairly solid, but its design is terrible. Now, I know the lockpicking and hacking minigames are often criticised, but to be honest, I'm okay with them. But like the rest of Fallout 3, their potential is squandered because they aren't used well. Hacking and lockpicking should be a skill your character has to bother to develop, which is then rewarded in the form of extra loot, or the ability to alter a situation, or even bypass a trickier fight. But let's look at their actual use in the opening. To access the Overseer's chamber, you could pick the very easy, almost impossible to fail lock, or you could open the dresser drawer one room away and take the key. To access the Overseer's computer, you could do the hacking minigame, or you could open the drawer directly next to the computer and obtain the password directly. While this is probably done to teach the player that hacking and lockpicking are useful but can sometimes be circumvented by resourcefulness and being aware of your environment, they impart the far stupider lesson that hacking and lockpicking is pointless and you'll be able to skip them incredibly easily. So players are ingrained with the belief that these minigames can be avoided and you ought to look.
12.
There are too many ways around hacking / lockpicking in the vault.
The game here is just trying to teach you that exploration is good, One might initially come to the conclusion that there is always a way around hacking lockpicking. That idea will be shut down quickly after seeing the number of science and lockpicking/hacking minigames in Megaton where there is no way around.
Almost every area to be accessible to anyone at any time. This means that the developers had to avoid making an area the player could go too early, which let me remind you is anywhere, too hard. So let's be honest, all enemies and characters in the game have fairly low quality equipment and stats, and no lockpicks or hacking minigames in your path require much skill to activate. This practically eliminates
13.
The game is too easy.
For this exact same reason, the game is a difficulty slider and enemies level up with you. Plus, different places have different type of enemies and rewards. Of course, your average raider camp will be easy to beat. Fallout 3 is by no means a hard game, even on the highest difficulties, but it is no pure power fantasy either. Have you visited all only? 14.
The game is unplayable without mods.
Modders do often change the game's aspects to better suit some of the player base. While this is no excuse for shoddy game design, Fallout 3 is perfectly playable without mods. Then there will be as many people who played the game as those who downloaded mods. 15.
The place where you should be able to expect the enemies and their skills, weapons and armor to really get more difficult is the main story. But the developers had no way of knowing what level the player would be when they were doing the main story and wanted to make sure players didn't get stuck. So once the Enclave turn up, not only do they engage you in small enough numbers that they're not a problem even at quite a low level, but once you encounter them in greater numbers close to the climax, there's invariably something else shooting at them.
The game is too easy.
Are you sure you are playing the game on at least medium difficulty? In any case, I'm fairly certain that you are on God mode while showing how easy the game is, as you took not little but no damage there. And if the clips you showed were just meant to be filler, then what proof do you have for the game being easy? Online there seems to be people saying both that the game is easy and hard. So unless HbomberGuy has numbers or an interview with someone who actually understands game design to back him up, this is perhaps one of the worst claims in the video. 16.
Old only confuses new players.
Various NPCs tell you multiple times that old only is hell, and even if you are a new player who has no idea how difficulty works and doesn't listen to NPCs, you will still think twice before attacking 3 death gloves with a tiny pistol. The criticism about the reward you get at the end is somewhat fair, but few games manage to keep up their rewards in line with how much the players improve towards the end. Fallout 2 also had a similar problem. 17.
Location of places.
This is actually a good point. Fallout 3 leans too much on its open world aspect and places low level and high level places too close to each other. In fact, Bethesda 2 probably solved this, and in Fallout 4, despite all its other flaws, placed the most difficult encounters in a separate part of the map. 18.
Compass.
Once again, not a very original criticism, but when it is true. Bethesda was already in the right track with telling the player where to go without map markers in Morrowind, and surely they could have done a better system in Fallout 3. My guess is that they thought this could become a little too complicated when you needed to remember 20 quests and how to get to them at once, combined with the sheer chaos of some parts of the map, apocalypse and all that, but surely they could have found a way around it. 19.
Mr. Matty plays saying that he didn't see Liberty Prime when first entering the Brotherhood of Steel.
Kind of a dumb example. It is wrong to come to a conclusion from a poorly thought out comment from a single video anyway, but on top of that, he says that he didn't see it because he was in awe of the rest of the room. Bethesda is awful at many things, but the one thing that they are good at is visual storytelling. 20.
Map quest design in the early game.
Fallout 3 does have a complex and interesting route for the first part of the main quest. There is an 8-stage quest line, most of which has multiple ways to be solved. Pay off Moriarty, unlock his computer, talk to his employee, do his quest, which also has many ways to be completed. First of all, just like how you can go to the endgame location in Fallout 1 as soon as the game starts, as HbomberGuy points out, you can also use your knowledge of the world exploration and experiences from past playthroughs to go immediately to the vault where your dad is in Fallout 3 as well. It is true that Fallout 1 is more open with how you can discover the water chip, but in Fallout 3, when playing the game, you can come across people giving you directions as to where dad went naturally as well. Go online and type Fallout 1, where is the first recommended search option you will get will be water chip. Do the same for Fallout 3 and that is way down the list. This simply is a design choice to have players new to the RPGs. You might think that this is completely unacceptable and that only true competitive MLG pro gamer raison character sheets that milk players that truly care about the games they play deserve to have fun, but I don't think many people would agree with that. There are more open-ended side quests later on like Tampany Tower, The Family, and Trouble in the Home Front that want a more old-school experience as well.
21. Gizmo's quest was good, and there was no such example in Fallout 3.
Okay, let's take a look at another quest that also happens to take place on a location which is not marked by the main quest, but that may still be on your path if you are doing it. Tampany Tower. When you first come across this place, you encounter a conflict between two sides in a natural manner. After that, you can choose to pick up the quest from one of the sides that seems to be in the right at first. But wait, after speaking to the other side, it turns out that they may have a point after all. And you can choose to resolve this conflict in many ways that may result in many different endings. What else do you want? The more I watch this video, the more I think that you have a grudge against the game. Did Todd Howard kill your dog or something?
His own thing for his own reasons. All the game's truly big decisions, the decision to abandon his life's work and raise his son, the decision to leave and try again, the decision to kill himself in order to prevent the Enclave from taking over, you spend too much of this game watching your dad have a much more intricate story. So
22.
That is the main character.
The game's main conflict is about whether you want to follow your dad's footsteps. Do you want to do as he says and use the purifier for the people, or to cleanse the wastes? Do you want to sacrifice yourself for the greater good like that, or have someone else do it for you? Also, outside of the only decision that your dad makes within the game's time frame is to not give up the purifier and to leave the vault, which you can later scorn him for. This is like complaining that the overseer from Fallout 1 takes the decisions from your hand by telling you to pick up the water chip. I know someone really good at hunting down dog killers. We can help. 23 and 24.
Dr. Lee tells you what to do, and I don't feel like the main character.
The exact same thing happens in Fallout 1 after you deliver the water chip as well, where the overseer takes over again and directly tells you to do as he says. Also, who's better suited to handle the control of a purifier? The scientist who worked on it for her entire life and technically owns it, or the fish out of water teenager with PTSD? Also, a lot of endgame stuff in Fallout 1 is also handled by the Brotherhood and is out of your hand as well, but I guess it's just that no one from Bedlock Isle Studios killed HbomberGuy's dog. 25.
Fallout is not an RPG.
You are correct. Fallout 3 is not an RPG, it's an action RPG. Do I list it as true or false? I'll just say nothing for now.
this weapon was touted hugely before it came out, a physics gun that shoots stuff at people. How fun! I'm not saying the rocket launcher's bad, it's not an inherently stupid thing to add to a game, but is it the sort of thing you should be adding to your game before the writing, or storytelling, or game design? One last big
rocket launcher.
Well, this actually makes me a little angry. Just because they show a gun in their trailers does not mean that it was the first thing they made in the game. Are you that uninformed on game development? They don't, or at least shouldn't, make games after the trailer.
games, dialogue had a lot of sneaky behind the scenes stuff going on. If your character wasn't smart enough to know something, you couldn't say it in a conversation. And even then, if you didn't have high enough speech, the smarter, more convincing options weren't available. You didn't even see
27.
Skill checks.
Once again, this is a design choice. Knowing which speech option requires skills helps players on their other runs and does not affect the first run, since you can't go back and change your skills mid-conversation. 28.
Speech.
Once again, a design choice. Fallout 1 and 2 also had a similar problem, where speech and charisma often just help you discover information which you would have already know from early runs anyway.
29. Gun degradation.
A fair criticism, gun degradation could have been done better. 30.
Fat Man is not well balanced.
Fat Man is mostly well balanced, it has expensive and rare ammo, it can be used indoors, and it can be dangerous with allies around, and of course gives you a lot of damage. 31.
Tutorial is a macrocosm for the entire game.
One quest that is intentionally made to be accessible does not work as an example for the whole game. 32.
Amata gets angry for killing the Overseer.
Excuse me, if someone came and killed your father, who wasn't even directly attacking his killer, wouldn't you at least be a little annoyed after his death? Didn't you want an alive and realistic world? Also, after the incident, she does somewhat get over it and realizes the situation you were in. She never really forgives you for it, but does think after the fact. 33.
A lot of enemies just give you the option between fighting or dying.
Because that's what enemies do. 99% of NPCs that attack you are raiders and super mutants, who have no reason to talk to you. Enclave soldiers who have orders to shoot you anyway, and feral ghouls like some wild animals who would attack you in any situation. Also, these same enemies, with few exceptions, also attack you on sight in Fallout 1 and 2 as well. But let's just not remember that, right? Random encounters with only hostile enemies weren't a thing after all. 34.
Karma was done badly.
This is a good example. Gaining and losing karma should have been only limited to mostly objectively bad/good things like nuking Medicatan or helping people in need. Or there should have been some sort of a reputation system which was affected by things that were seen by NPCs. That's why they must have removed from Fallout 4 and New Vegas had a reputation system inserted in. 35.
You can't be a bad person.
While it is true that in general the Lone Wanderer has more good than bad options compared to other Fallout protagonists, you still have many opportunities to be evil. You can become a slaver, become a pure human supremacist, kill innocent ghouls, and don't get me even started on the pit. 36.
There are no grey moral areas.
I'm going to ignore the pit even though it has one of the best morality decisions in the entire series, since DLC should not probably be judged in the reviews, but outside of that the criticism is somewhat correct actually. In most cases where morality is an issue, the choices help people or help yourself. It is normal to feel that this isn't adequate.
Fallout 3 reuses and references tons of aspects of the previous games, which is normally fine. It's in a series, but it reuses all of this stuff on a constant basis as a crutch, and it never really does any of that old stuff the justice it deserves. There are so many things that appear to have been brought back simply so the game looks more like a Fallout game, not because they actually needed to be there. Similarly, the super mutants are back. I expected this because they've been around since the first game, but I didn't expect them to be so poorly done. Fallout 1's mutants are dumb and violent, but they have a purpose and a goal and a set of beliefs about themselves and the world.
The super mutant is the next advancement in human evolution. Soon, everyone in the world will be converted, and peace will reign.
They have a moral code that they believe will lead to peace. You don't get the chance to spare any mutants in the first game, but you're given ample opportunities to explore why they can't be, and why they wouldn't listen to you. In 2, the mutants are far less relevant, but the final boss is technically a super mutant in power armor. Otherwise, the mutants you do run into are all a little more chilled out.
You're talking a long time ago. The world's moved on.
People are racist towards mutants for things that happened a long time before, and the mutants secretly still believe that their master plan could have worked. There's a texture to them, especially to Marcus, who will happily claim he thinks his best human friend would be better if they'd been turned into a mutant.
What a great mutant he would have been.
There are tensions, and yet there isn't any reason for hostility. It's just people with different views and appearances learning slowly to get along. In Fallout 3, the mutants are orcs. They run around killing people for seemingly no reason. They're dumb, they yell and scream about murder, they keep bags of human gore lying around. There's no master plan, no explanation, no justification. They're raiders, but tinted green. They're something for the Brotherhood to be fighting against, and we'll get to the fucking Brotherhood. The mutants are the most interesting characters in the series to me. They live a long time and have a lot to think about. Turning them into this is abysmal.
37.
The sequel is the same.
Well, yes, games in a series too often look similar. I have a feeling that if Fallout 3 didn't have all the things that Fallout 1 also had, HbomberGuy would write a complaining about how different the games are despite being sequels. Just a thought. 38.
The mutants are dumb.
The reason the super mutants in Fallout 3 don't seem to have a clear purpose other than make more mutants is because their command structure is destroyed and they are going off of what they were programmed to do. I will say that Fallout New Vegas did this whole thing much better and explained it well, but there isn't really anything wrong with the super mutant or in Fallout 3. Also, there are multiple friendly mutants in the game who do try to explain their mindset. Don't know where HbomberGuy is coming from. Also, 99% of super mutants also attack your site in Fallout 1 and 2 as well, but 39.
Fallout 3 you reuse stuff.
Again, sequels reuse stuff. Fallout 2 did it, Fallout New Vegas did it. There are specific raw reasons for all of these things to exist. It's not like the entire game is a remake. Also, the example that both Fallout 1 and 2 and 3 had a talking computer is really dumb. There were talking computers before Fallout 1, and just because it was done once doesn't mean it can never be done again. Also, Fallout 2 had a talking computer as well, but HbomberGuy ignores that all the time, so I guess we don't really need to care.
The Hood of Steel is that they're so human. They're likeable, they're cool, they're smart, they're powerful, and they're wrong. Fallout 2 is the story of their failure to truly help the world or themselves as they wither away into nothingness. The title screen of 2 is an Enclave soldier. The Brotherhood have been replaced as the strongest faction in the Wasteland. And a loading screen features a tribal in the same pose as the Knight from Fallout 1's title screen, wearing a desecrated Brotherhood helmet. That's some pretty powerful imagery right there, especially for a loading screen. They were never really the good guys, but they did care, and you kind of feel sad for their mistakes. In Fallout 3, the Brotherhood run around shooting mutants because they're the good guys now.
40.
The Brotherhood.
HBomber dives into a lot of topics here, and most of them are questionable at best. He talks about how the Brotherhood didn't seem alive and you never understand these people. This is all once again mostly based on a player's experience. I looked online and the community seems divided on the topic. I personally felt that the ideology and logic of the Brotherhood was much better defined in the first 2 games, but the characters were done better in the newer ones. Maybe it's just that there are more faces and voices. However, it is true that Fallout 1 put much more effort into diversifying the Brotherhood's characters. This can be considered a design choice, but looking at large, it can be considered an oversight too.
The reuse of old concepts smacks, like with the opening birth scene, of hasty attempts at storytelling and world building. It's as if the developers were handed the rights to 3, and they knew they had to make a game, but not much should actually go into it, resulting in a cobbled together mishmash of whatever original ideas they came up with in some initial meeting, and ideas borrowed from the other games but given no real thought. The Fallout series is characterised largely not by adherence to a core set of concepts, but by change. War never changes, but the world the war is fought in does. In Fallout 2, things changed. The super mutants weren't trying to conquer the world in the name of progress, they were survivors of a dead ideology, and the ones left were trying to do good, or at least have some peace, living in a town founded on the site where a Brotherhood Knight and a super mutant fought for so long that they realised how pointless it was, and sat down and started working together. That sort of concept was unthinkable in the world of the first Fallout. Things didn't stay the same just for the sake of being like the old one. Even the money changed. Fallout 3 didn't know what it wanted to be, or how to grow or shift or change these things, so it ended up playing like a Cliff Notes version of the ideas that were popular or well known in the previous ones. Caps are back, because caps are a pop culturally remembered thing from Fallout 1. The mutants are here, but they're just generic bad guys. The Brotherhood of
The developers didn't care about the game.
HbomberGuy goes on to the same topic again. Fallout 3 is new content and new factions, and the development team had enough on their plate trying to turn the series into an FPS from an asymmetric RPG and make all the assets and make a new world. Of course they didn't have the time to remake every single aspect of the game. It is brave enough for them to make Fallout 3 into the West Coast rather than using the scrapped Fallout 3 story. This game was worked on for years, and despite all its other flaws, clearly there is passion, patience and work put into it. At this point it seems like he's just trying to hurt the developers. Also, I'm really sorry about the talk, but you have to let it go. 42.
The endings were bad.
HbomberGuy goes over the endings of both Fallout 1 and 3 here. This is definitely where I give him the most credit for, but there are still holes. First of all, I'm going to once again ignore DLC. The Broken Steel DLC gives you a little more satisfying ending and you can send folks into the chamber, but DLC does not represent the game, so it's okay. However, I will criticize his treatment of Colonel Autumn. If you actually dig into the story of the game, it is clear that Autumn is a victim of the president as much as you and just wants to do the right thing. He also isn't trying to poison the water. Some people seem to misunderstand that part. It is however true that you can only need a speed check to calm him down, but there is probably a reason behind this, seeing as Fallout 2 and New Vegas also have similar endings where you can use speech to solve all your problems. 43.
With two men in rooms. When you meet President Eden, you're in a similar scenario. Eden wants to convince you to enact his genocide, but unlike with the Master or the Lieutenant or anyone, there's no explanation, no underlying motive, it's just, I am bad guy, we need to kill mutants, genocide good.
Super mutants and ghouls must be purged. We need to clear the way for humanity to rebuild the wastes.
The Master had a comprehensive explanation for why the human race needed to be converted into mutants now. Bethesda can't come up with a single compelling explanation for why this is actually a good idea beyond the platitude of, we need to undo mutants, do you get it? I'm a racist. There's no philosophical struggle. It's impossible to even attempt to reason out why this philosophy is right or wrong in a rational manner because it's so fucking stupid that it defies rationality. You can't show
President and Enclave's ideology was stupid.
Is it though? Since the beginning, the Enclave's ideology was to kill everyone who wasn't them in the most efficient way possible, so that they may rebuild Earth with like-minded people. Fallout 2 also had the same story. This isn't exactly rocket science, but the Master's plan from Fallout 1 was also the same thing, but with mutants instead of Enclave soldiers. This complaint would be okay if he was complaining about Fallout 3 treading on old grounds, but he clearly just doesn't see it this way.
Or the way you killed the president was dumb.
Yeah, that was kinda stupid. The developers could have done better.
the rest of the game too. Those same shit-stained fingerprints are all over it. Pick a cartoon character or kill them both. Nuke a town for no reason or don't. Ask Tenpenny Tower not to be racist or fucking murder a bunch of innocent ghouls for no reason. I don't even know what Autumn was.
45. No, that's the worst example you can give. There is a solution where almost everyone is happy in those quests. The superhuman gambit requires you to pick up information from across the map and cross-examine both heroes to get the best ending. It would have taken 10 seconds to check the wiki. 46.
Why does Broken still exist?
The most common explanation is that the developer didn't have the time to put the last few quests together. I do believe this because this DLC isn't just one quest that finishes the game proper. There are new locations, characters, weapons, enemies. Bethesda could have just slapped together a DLC like Horse Armor from Oblivion and sold it for $30, but they made a proper DLC. I do think that it would have been better if they released it as free content because of how important it is for the main story. There is that to complain about. That's that. You might not agree with every single point I made there, but I think we can all agree that there were enough problems here to warrant attention, and I tried my best at addressing these here. But there is one more thing. The real point of this video was not to defend Fallout 3 or attack HbomberGuy himself. It was to better the Fallout series. There is one thing I haven't told you about myself yet. I don't like Fallout 3. It's repetitive, some of its core mechanics are terribly designed, a lot of quests have bad reversed both in terms of material and story. Worst of all, just looking at the game makes me want to puke. It's not that Fallout 1 and 2 grainy, old, ugly, it's just bland to look at. Does this mean that Fallout 3 is garbage? No, in fact, overall I think it's at least okay to good. It has passion and good ideas that are executed well, but it also has a lot of flaws and we shouldn't be talking about just how awful the game is, but instead talk about where it failed and where it succeeded in a critical and constructive manner. Us, gamers, content creators, viewers, should help to make the games we play better when we talk about them, because both current and later potential game makers watch these videos and listen to us. Not all do, of course, but enough of them listen to us to influence their design choices. Remember the Battle Royale craze of last year? Or perhaps the removal of paid mods from Skyrim after the outrage? Or perhaps the paid mods returning when enough people paid for them? That was all us, people, our actions deciding how companies and developers act. So imagine what the creators of Fallout 3, some of whom who later went on to make later games like Fallout 76 and 4 thought when they saw a video like this, when the years of work and sleepless night and hours talking about game design was just completely called garbage. Their good and bad being rolled into a ball and thrown away. Maybe, just maybe, Bethesda made Fallout 76 and Fallout 4 into the grindy, kill, loot, craft, cycle games into what they were, because they thought that people like HbomberGuy and me who would buy actually story-driven, deep, hardcore games were so blinded by our hatred and nostalgia that we wouldn't care even if they gave us what we wanted. I like Fallout. Every game with good things and bad things. I think it is possible to make a more or less perfect RPG or even action RPG Fallout game if Bethesda actually cared about the games again and the developers were directed better. But with every video such as this one, the idea of a perfect shiny Fallout game gets muddier and muddier.